You know, I make this comment a lot, but it's not on this board to, in my opinion, it's not on this board to comment on energy efficiency of windows when they meet code. They've met code, they're allowed to have those windows. It's not really our purview, it's how those windows look and how does it complement the building. So when this comes to us, those things have already been vetted and they've already been approved.
To a degree,
Okay.
what I would say is there is a design element when it comes to incorporating the site distance triangle, because it's sort of like the right, when it comes to landscape design, it's the right plant material in the right location. And then I believe you were also mentioning about there's an element of maintenance that's required in order to maintain that. And so putting that information on the plans, at the very least, when the plans are handed over to the landscape contractor for installation, and then whoever does the continuing maintenance, that is something that kind of trips at least should trip the memory that these need to be maintained in a certain, and that can be done with this in the specs as well.
And I think if you're talking about procedurally,
Yes.
after the presentation, after the presenter gives their presentation, the petitioner or staff report, the chair or vice chair will, go down the line for comments. I think the problem was we were already in the middle of a vote, but yeah, it should, for each item, there will be an opportunity for each member to make their comments or ask their questions. You can ask questions of staff, of the petitioner, of any other experts that we have in the room.
Before the vote, but
Right.
I seem to have come in too late to interject that because voting had already started, I think.
Well, and that might have been my fault because obviously I don't normally do this. So I think over the last 6 years, I've had 3 or 4 different chairs, and everyone kind of directs the meeting a little bit differently. And so I think what we do is everyone goes down the line, whether starting at either end. I know Chair Ruby usually flip-flops it, and then everyone says what they were planning on saying, but obviously there should be time, and I should be like, is there anything else we'd like to discuss, so that you can comment on each other's comments before going into vote. I might have just jumped in to vote because I just am trying to follow the things.
That would
Yeah.
help.
If I may say, when David first made the comment, if I might,
Please.
it didn't come across that you were objecting to it. You just made a comment. If you'd said, I would like that included in the site plan, then maybe the motion
Yes.
would have been amended.
When would have I said
When they first asked you,
First discussion round with.
first discussion after I talked, I deferred to you, and then you made a comment about the,
Because I was with Adrian, I thought it was a graphic representation on the plan that was missing,
Yeah,
that
I
I
didn't
just didn't know because we're not landscape architects, and I'm
And-
not familiar.
Yeah, understanding.
But then
so
she
I-
clarified, or had you clarify, so it,
and then the motion might have been amended to
Correct.
include.
That is correct. So I think the key thing to be on the lookout for is when there's a second. Because when there's a second, that means
That's
discussion
close.
begins. And if you do have something that was not in the original motion, you can ask the maker of the motion, would you consider an amendment? And then whoever made the second would say whether or not
Thank you, members. Dudley Goodlett, the chairman, the vice chairman of the commission, and our chairperson is here by Zoom today, Chairperson Susan Jones, and she's asked me to sort of guide the proceedings while she's joining us online. And hopefully are you there now, Susan?
So we have Martha
Yeah.
today, right? Yeah, I don't see Susan yet.
Let me wait just 1 minute to see if she arrives before we call the roll. There we are. Good morning, Chairman Jones. In the absence of the chair, I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Cardillo?
Here.
Commissioner Lehman?
Here.
Commissioner Lyle?
Here.
Vice Chair Goodlett?
Here.
And Chair Jones?
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Members, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Can't get the words out. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, members. Next item on our agenda, members, is public comment. Is there any public comment? Jessica, have we received any public comments?
None.
Okay, and I don't see anyone present. And is anyone on the line for public comments? Seeing none, let's move on to our agenda. And the next item is the closed session, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Morawski to tell us next steps in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. So the next,
In closed session.
We go to a different room.
That we're in closed
He has to announce it first and then we'll.
yeah,
go.
I'm waiting for him to tell us that we're in closed session.
Right.
And he has told me to remind you that when we are in closed session, you have to talk into your microphone so that the people on Zoom can hear you.
Okay. Okay, we're back in session, and before I move to the approval of the prior meeting, Chairman Jones, I heard you making some comments that we couldn't hear. Did you want to add anything before we proceed?
Well, I was just asking the question of if who takes minutes of our closed session if our city clerk is not in the room? And don't we need those for a future disclosure?
That would be Mr. Morowski.
Okay, thank you.
No, my understanding, and Jessica can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the closed session minutes will be reviewed by the clerk, and they take the minutes from there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, that's an intermediate. I wasn't aware of the process.
I hope you haven't been waiting for me to do it, because I've not.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'm confused because she wasn't here.
Yes, that's what's my question. I'm sorry, I thought that Mr. Morowski was going to give his notes or his minutes to her.
No, but our closed session was recorded. So she
Okay.
can review the recording and take minutes from that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
We can clarify with the
Not-
clerk, but I believe in the past it was the attorney who provided minutes.
Okay, so it is recorded, it's just you weren't physically present.
It is not recorded. Closed sessions are not recorded.
Oh, okay. So then Mr. Morowski would have to prepare minutes.
Luckily, Mr. Morowski is not so old that I can't remember what happened in that meeting. I put together some very brief minutes because basically a continuance was requested and granted, and Commissioner Lehman recused himself.
You're now in public session.
There you go. You're right. Okay.
Now, let's proceed with the minutes of the May 3 meeting. Is there any discussion regarding those minutes?
I've got a
Commissioner
question,
Lau.
if I could, and this is, it's on page 2, just above the, halfway down, just above the motion by Goodlett. The two sentences before that, and Attorney Edenfield, I'm not sure you can answer this because it's about what Attorney Dunbar opined. But it says, Attorney Dunbar opined that commissioners who vote against the amended bylaws may operate under the current standards going forward. And I guess my question is that forever? I mean, if they're reappointed, even is that, as long as you vote against it, you never have to follow the bylaws?
I don't think I can answer that. I think something must have been lost in the translation. I was not present at the meeting, so I'm not sure exactly what the exchange was on that, but I would like to be able to get Attorney Dunbar to clarify, to make sure we get what he was advising correct in the minutes.
Completely understood, and as a result of that, I would just ask we defer approval of these minutes until we have that information.
There's a motion to defer consideration. Is there any discussion? Any objection to deferring the approval of the May 3rd meeting until a follow-up conversation consistent with Commissioner Lau's question? Without objection, show that motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, members. We're now in public session. We've deferred the approval of the May 3rd meeting, and now we're on the bylaws questions and answers. I'll turn it over to Mr. Morowski and Ms. Edenfield.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these are a series of questions that were submitted by Chair Jones and Commissioner Lehman as well, submitted to Mr. Dunbar, sort of hypothetical questions about how they would be handled under the new bylaw amendment. And Mr. Dunbar and Ms. Edenfield have put together this memo responding to those questions. So put it on the agenda for you all to discuss if you wanted to do that.
Point of information.
Yes, Commissioner Lehman, you're recognized for a point of information.
The questions I asked were not hypothetical. They arose from actual invitations, one from the Airport Authority and one from the city to attend a charrette type of meeting with the covered persons in attendance. So they aren't hypothetical, they're actual. Just thank you for that.
I would further say that most of mine were actual also, that I just chose not to participate in, but they were actual questions. So these are things that we certainly will be encountering.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Any other questions? Okay, you want to go through those with us, Ms. Edenfield? The members of the commission like for her to review those? If you've read them, do we need to belabor those points? Is there any question? Yeah.
I'd be fine with just acknowledging that we received this and not taking any further action unless somebody has questions about it. I don't seem to need to go through each one of them.
I
Mr.
would
Lehman?
agree in general, they're helpful. I don't know that they're dispositive. In preparation for this meeting, I actually went back and spent several hours looking at those portions of the meetings in which these issues were discussed. In part, that was impeded because one of our meetings was not properly videotaped and was unavailable. That has since been corrected as of yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to finish that review, and that was actually the March 1st meeting in which we had a substantial conversation on these matters. The reason I raised the point is that there is an interesting diversity of legal advice in those discussions, some of which conflicts with this written document. And I know that, you know, in these meetings, things are said, and then on deliberation, things change. The problem with that is if you follow this advice and then later somebody looks back at the prior public record, now you're in a stew, a gray area, and you might not be where you want to be. I make specific reference to one striking comment on that March 1st tape at about 42 minutes. Mr. Dunbar stated in this discussion on this topic, and I quote, the commissioner under these he said regarding the commissioners, quote, they give up the right to any public speech before a covered person. Now that's a strong statement and conflicts with the specific advice we have here in that you could ask a question, for example, it states here, but according to our attorney's clearly stated opinion on March 1st, to even ask a question is public speech before a covered person, and you'd be in violation. So I'm not yet satisfied that we have clarified the commissioner's permissible participation in democracy. And I remain concerned that we haven't unmuddled it, and as we'll discuss at another date, that we've proscribed First Amendment rights too harshly for the benefit they provide for the public appearance of this commission. And I think my long-term concern is that because of this confusion and limitation, we will find it more difficult than we need to populate this commission with willing and able commissioners, and I remain concerned about that. But this document has not clarified because it conflicts with, I've given you one example, there are several prior comments that have confused me as to what I might do, other than stay at home and watch the television. And I don't think that that's fair to citizens who are concerned about how our city is governed. Thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Lau, do you have a comment? And I'd like Ms. Edenfield to comment as well. And I'll recognize you in just a second, Chairman Jones. Go ahead.
I don't really want to walk into this briar patch, but the last thing that the commissioner just said about not being appropriate for the class of citizens he referred to, it's not. It's appropriate for the very few who are willing to spend a couple of years, maybe for sitting in judgment of those that they would otherwise be for. So I continue, I'm sure, to have disagreements with the commissioner. Perhaps what he should do is to speak to the authors of this memorandum, and if the authors want to provide a revised memorandum or a supplemental memorandum, they could do so. The question I have for Commissioner Lehman is not about the substance, but you said that one of our meetings was not properly video recorded, and could I ask the indulgence of the chair to just share with me how that was discovered and how it's being remedied?
Yeah. Commissioner Lehman, you're recognized. And then I'll come to you, Chairman Jones. I'm sorry.
Thank you. As I said, I went back and reviewed the tapes on this subject and came to about the hour point on that tape, and it just went blank. And I contacted Mr. Freilich, and within a week he's corrected it and said he's posted an accurate video. Apparently, these are very large files, and sometimes they don't transcribe. He has to take what he's recording now and reduce it in size so it can be transmitted over the web. And he's repeated the process and tells me it's now corrected. if you look at these tapes, you will frequently find small errors, 10 minutes intro of random music that didn't get clipped, a bunch of other things that happen. I've sat in David's room. It's very busy up there. There's a lot going on. So anyway, he corrected it. I found it. He corrected it. I believe we're good. I don't know, Mike, if you double-checked, but Mike and I babysat that issue until it was resolved.
Let me come back to Commissioner Lyle, and then, Chairman Jones, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to complete the thought process that's going on here. Commissioner Lyle.
Thank you, Acting Chair Goodlett. And you know, my concern is if it wasn't for Commissioner Lehman's diligence in looking at this, that might not have been discovered maybe ever. So I don't know if it's appropriate to suggest our executive director monitor those. You could have that tape playing in the background, you know, while you're doing more productive things and be sure that it's all there. But I'm very disappointed to hear that the city staff didn't do that verification, and it took a commissioner's diligence to bring that to staff's attention and get it rectified. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, Chairman Jones, you're recognized. Sorry.
Yes, I just had a specific question, or just a kind of a comment, maybe both, on question number 6 that I asked, which is, can a commissioner make contributions or participate in a PAC that might make a contribution to a candidate, either financially or otherwise? So I used the term PAC, but I'm just going to throw out this example, and I'd kind of like a response on this. Let's just say you're a member of one or the other dominant parties in this country, and you participate in something that that party offers, and then that party comes out and supports a particular candidate, which they may do either financially or just, you know, sending out a flyer saying, hey, this is a Republican or this is a Democrat and we support them. Are you now in trouble? If you have an ethics violation because you've, you know, participated in some way or the other in a political party meeting or gathering or anything that would relate to it?
I'll ask Ms. Edenfield to respond to that. If you were following, Martha, that on the question she asked, number 6, did you follow that? Would you like to respond?
I did. I think that there's some things that are so far removed that they could not be reasonably foreseen to be impacting someone who may become a covered person within the city of Naples. But I will say I hesitate to answer on the fly. So I think that the best procedure, and including what Commissioner Lehman raised as well, is to submit requests for clarifications from us, and we will work on those to respond directly to the questions you have, and do so in writing, so that we're not going back and pulling meetings where we just said something to opine on one set of facts without looking at the broader question. So I think that would be helpful to ask for additional clarification.
Thank you. I think that's a very responsible way to proceed as well. Commissioner Lehman.
Ms. Edenfield, thank you. I certainly think that one question I'd ask for clarification on, because it's a central term in this, is what is public policy and when does it stop? And because that's a key term. And for example, if a few doors down from my house, the owner decides that that's a great place for a halfway house, and the city is considering changing the zoning for that, a little far-fetched for Naples, but you never know. Can I go to a meeting and say that's a bad idea, or would I be proscribed by the bylaws because that is that a public policy or not? So that kind of question where the clear interests as a person are stifled potentially by the bylaw, that would be the sort of case that I'm most concerned about. Thank you.
Martha, you want to respond or comment?
I think I wrote down the question. I'll take it under advisement and look at that in context of the memo and how the term public policy is used throughout, and we'll work on a clarification of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything? Yes. Chairman Jones, you're recognized. Your mic is not on.
That's because I muted it.
That happens that way.
I just wanted to have a follow-up to, I think, a comment by Commissioner Lehman and a comment by Commissioner Lyle, who frequently find themselves pretty far apart on this particular issue anyway. And I guess I think I'm somewhere in the middle in that I don't think you should, to be effective on this commission, that you should have to go, sit at your house and watch TV. But on the other hand, there is a certain level of political activism that maybe isn't appropriate. But I am concerned about that because, the example that I'm bringing up would preclude you from really being involved in anything because we're talking about perhaps a city council member who's going to run for re-election, so they are a covered person. You might go to a party of your choice meeting, and all of a sudden that party decides 6 months later or 30 days later to give a contribution or to come out and endorse the candidate, and now you're in trouble. And I don't really feel that to be an effective commissioner, you should be in a total bubble. I think it's important that we do be somewhat informed on the issues that affect our city, as well as being able, and I don't see how you can do that if you can't go to any forums, you can't listen to the candidates, you can't go to anything that involves a political party now you're even saying, well, you can't go somewhere, or you can't speak up if there's a covered person there, so that means you can't go to anything for which your congressman is at because a city council member might show up and you can't ask a question. And I feel like that is really getting overly restrictive on what we should be allowed to do to be effective. And we should be able to go and be informed and know what's going on in our community. So I just want to put that out there. I don't know how that gets from that sort of what I would say sort of a common sense approach to it gets into the bylaws and gets into all of these questions that I've asked. But I would say most of these questions I've certainly had come up in some form or the other over the last few years, and they're real. That's real life here in Naples. It is a small town. So I just want to put that on the record. Thank you.
I'll ask Martha if she and Pete would take those thoughts, the thoughts from this morning, into consideration in following up on a redraft of the bylaws questions and answers.
We will, and it occurs to me that it may ultimately include some recommendations for amendments to the bylaws to clarify these in accordance with what is appropriate for the commission.
I agree, Martha. That's a good suggestion. Commissioner Lyle, I'm sorry.
Thank you. In response to Chair Jones's comments, actually, Chair Jones, I think you are further away from how I feel about this based on those comments than is Commissioner Lehman, because I've never heard Commissioner Lehman indicate that he thinks he needs to go to these meetings to do his job here. I've heard him say that he wants to go to these meetings to be better informed and generally doesn't think those rights should be curtailed. What I've heard you say, Commissioner Jones, is that you apparently now think that in order to do your job on this commission, which is supposed to have a great deal of independence and able to exercise independent judgment, that you can't do that unless you're out mingling with covered persons. And so that's more extreme than what I understood Commissioner Lehman's to be, and I find it frankly pretty troubling. Thank you.
Well, excuse me, I
Yes.
would like to respond to that.
Yes, Chairman Jones,
Okay.
you're recognized, please.
I don't think that's exactly what I said, Commissioner Lau, with all due respect. I am just suggesting that to be effective as a commissioner, I think you have to have some idea what's going on in your community. So I didn't really use the words, nor would I use the words mingling with covered persons, but I'm just saying, if you go to a certain meeting or that's discussing an issue in town, there certainly may be covered persons at that meeting. Sometimes you may not know that they're going to be there. Sometimes, of course, you would know that they're going to be there. But I do think I think we should be informed citizens to serve on this commission, and that's what I'm really saying. Is I believe we should be informed citizens. That doesn't necessarily rise to a high level of political activism, but we should be informed citizens.
And I would expect that Martha and Pete will take those thoughtful comments into consideration as they go forward. Any further discussion on this item? Sir. Yes, Commissioner Lehman.
Since this is our main business this morning, I hope you will forgive me for another 3 minutes on the subject.
No problem.
Thank you. I think, and I really like to engage other commissioners on this, even if only to think about it for further discussion, future discussion. One of the things that I feel I would need to do a good job making a judgment about an ethical matter is to understand how the city works. What are the pressures that come to bear on a covered person? What is it like to do that job? What people come and try and influence them? You know, what are the practicalities? You can't presume, you couldn't do this without understanding those things, because you have to make a considered judgment, a practical judgment about what is going on, maybe to find out whether there's an actual ethical violation, or even to decide what the appropriate response might be if an ethical violation is confirmed. And so I think what Chair Jones was saying is something I would agree with, that you have to understand our city and what the people who serve either as an elected official or appointed or official or an employee face when they do their jobs. These are not easy jobs to do. And when you add the sunshine law, the ethical requirements, you know, all of that stuff, it's a really hard thing to do. So however we get there, I'd like to get there with a commission that has people who do know this city, people who do know how city council works. They've sat in some city council meetings. They've watched what goes on. They've sat in advisory board meetings, that they know something about our civic body, not people who have never done that and decide that sitting on the Ethics Commission would be fun. I would really like people who know our city. And that's where we get into this gray matter. And it may be, and I must confess that over these many months debating with Commissioner Lyle on these points, that he has changed my opinion on this matter as to how far that is permissible. And I've come to see, to a certain degree, that he is correct. But I think our current bylaws still go a little far in terms of taking away First Amendment rights and the ability to participate in our democratic system here, in terms of the benefits they provide the commission in its performance of its duties. So I look forward to continued debate, but I have learned and listened carefully to Commissioner Lyle. I do, however, think that we commissioners should have a firm understanding of our city, the people who run it, and what their jobs are, so that we can make appropriate judgments in these matters. Thank you. I will not go.
Let me just make one comment and then recognize Commissioner Lau, and that is that I think we can fairly assume that the people that have appointed us, or the council, if you will, have certainly considered the engagement that each of us has had in this community over a period of time. So I think that goes without saying, that that's how we became as involved as they've asked us to become, and we'd be remiss if we didn't continue to be up to date on what's going on. Not necessarily, and certainly not with contributions, and perhaps not even in attending and participating in a council or other business, but observing it like you do and I do occasionally online after the fact. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Lau.
No, I think you made most of the points I was going to make, actually, Acting Chair, because as Commissioner Lehman described the appropriate qualifications for a member of the commission, most of those verbs that were used were past tense. And so bringing that level of knowledge of how the city works and you know what impacts our city to the commission is terrific. I absolutely applaud that. But during the limited time we're on this commission, when we are being asked to act in judgment of others, I just think we should be much more in the observing from remote location category than being in the room and watching people watch you and then even speaking. And it all goes back, and I think the memo does a really good job of this, in underscoring that it's about the public perception of the trust and the confidence that exists in this group. So, thank you. And Commissioner Lehman, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I thought you had good judgment, but now you're acting like you sometimes agree with me, so I'm more concerned. Thank you.
You can't carry water on both shoulders, right? Anything further on that subject? Martha, anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
I took a lot of notes on where everyone's coming from and what the concerns that were expressed, and we will, I feel free to send us additional questions, additional concerns, additional thoughts on the memo, and we will work to update and incorporate and address address the concerns.
We'll certainly work with Mike to follow up with you on that. Martha, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, if there's any further on that, members? If nothing further, next is the Executive Director's report. Mike?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first thing in my report, I just wanted to give you all a budget update for our upcoming 2022-2023 budget proposal. This budget that you have in front of you, I sat down with Nicole Fulham from the Finance Department, who is a wonderful, wonderful person. She went through all of this with me, and we put together this proposed budget. And you can see it's a total of $274,998, so just about $275,000, which is about $8,000 more than last year. Most of that actually is because of my salary increase and other increases related to my benefits and things like that. I have not yet had the opportunity to have my meeting with the city manager, but once I sit down with him, we'll go over this together. I don't foresee any significant changes to what's in front of you after that meeting, though I can't say the same thing for after the council votes on it. But that's basically what we're looking at for next year so far.
That's for information, no action item on it this time?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Lehman, do you have a question?
Two questions. For this current year, what is your prediction of the reserves that we have not used that we're returning to the city budget, if any?
You know, I didn't prepare that number, so this is a total guess, but I'm going to say probably about $50,000.
So if from a budget of roughly 265 or 270, we've returned 20% of that.
Yeah.
And that's not unexpected. I think we mentioned that we would have reserves, that if we didn't need to use them, we would return them.
Correct.
Second question, it's my memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, that at several meetings ago, your salary raise was voted at 4%, and we assumed 100, and it came out to 104. And I just want to and then there was discussion that the base wasn't quite correct. I just wanted to make sure that the current number of 105 and change reflects an accurate increase in your then existing salary.
Yes, that's correct. And what Nicole told me was that it needed to be this 105, 325 to adjust for any mid-year increases that considerably I might get next year.
Fine.
So that'll take you through the end.
I just wanted to make sure that it is now accurate. Thank you.
Anything further on that? If not, please proceed. Yes, Chair Jones, you're recognized. I'm sorry.
I muted myself again, sorry. It seems backwards to me, the unmute on this thing. But anyway, I just wanted to ask you about the only item that kind of went up a bunch of I mean, I understand all the software and all that, but it's the travel and training expense. And I just wondered if you could address what that increase relates to, that projected increase.
That increase relates to other expenses that we might have towards our ethics conference that's going to happen at the end of March, beginning of April. So I already expended some money on the down payment to the Hyatt House, which is the location we're going to have this, and there's going to be some additional money that will be working into the new budget. So when I explained all of that to Ms. Fulham, this is what she recommended we budget for that. So that's where the increase came from.
Do you have any guesses or estimates as to what kind of attendance you're expecting? And does that include all of your commissioners? Should we be attending?
Oh, I think you should absolutely attend. My working number is 100 people. I'm trying to get at least 100 attendees. And I mean, as long as I'm on the subject of that update, I might as well tell you that. So this is something that we're going to co-sponsor along with the Miami-Dade County Ethics Commission. So I'm hoping to get a good number of people from that commission to attend as well. I've reached out to the Inspector General of Miami-Dade County, who's agreed not only to do a presentation, but will bring some of his people along. I've reached out to and had a meeting with the county sheriff here, and he's fully on board. He's even committed to give us some money towards the conference if we need it, and provide some of his people to participate in the conference. So I'm rounding up those people. The state attorney, the gentleman who's in charge of public corruption in Miami-Dade, he's agreed to participate. And I'm speaking with the state attorney, Mr. Montecalvo, who's also agreed to be on board. So I'm rounding up the troops, and I think out of all those people, we ought to be able to get at least 100 people to attend, including, people from the city and things like that. So the planning is going pretty well, and
That's very encouraging. Good work.
That's-
Did
sounds
you have a
great.
follow-up question, Madam Chair?
No, I just, that was my question. Thank you very much.
So, the other thing I just wanted to update you about was you remember the amendments we did as far as post-employment and bids and contracts. I have transmitted those final versions to the mayor and the council. The mayor responded to me that they hope to put that on their agenda for their August meeting. So hopefully we'll get those approved by August. We also, as far as the website updates go, we have our second meeting, I think it is, with Pacific 54. Third meeting. That's tomorrow at 1:30, and I've been actively working on a lot of the content that is going to end up here. For my estimate, we have about almost 70% of the content completed already, at least first drafts. So that's moving forward. I did receive bios from all of you, except Commissioner Cardillo.
20 pages right now. I'm working on narrowing it down.
Yeah, I had to severely edit Commissioner Lyles because of all the accolades that he's received over his career, so.
You can't,
Give me some of his.
you cannot edit out his accolades.
Can you throw some over on my side?
The ones that are more than 20 years old, I cut those. So we are moving forward with that, and as far as also training, I need to do more training, which I'm going to schedule for over the summer months when things should be a little bit slower around here. And I'm meeting with the gentleman from HR this Friday morning to go over the list of the new employees and the people who still have not received training. So that's what I'll be doing the next couple of days.
That's great.
Excellent.
Did you have a comment, Chair Jones? I saw, yes.
I did, and I just was letting him finish because I'm back on the budget now. I apologize. My recollection is that this gets presented somewhere perhaps in August to City Council. So I'm wondering if we need to have some sort of motion to approve this budget today or at our next meeting, but which might be, I don't know when the next meeting is going to be. So I'm wondering just from a procedural standpoint if we need to approve this budget.
Yeah, that seems appropriate to me that we do that, Madam Chair. So
So moved.
Is there a motion? So moved by Commissioner Lehman. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection? Seeing none, show that motion approved unanimously. And thank you for that, Madam Chair. That's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Next thing on our agenda is matters of conference planning update. Did you go over all that?
Yes, sir. So you're up to 4D, matters from commission members.
Okay. Anything? Yes, Commissioner Lehman.
A question, Mike, I just thought of it now, because you asked me to send in a picture.
Yes.
And I haven't had a proper picture taken in years. And I just wondered, for the city council, there's actually a photographer who shows up and takes an official picture or two. We might not need to do that, but maybe we should have standardized pictures of all of us in coat and tie to put on the website instead of some random anyway, you get the idea. Might be nice to have a photographer show up.
Okay, I'll find out from the manager how they do that. I know Commissioner Goodlett, your photograph is the one from your law firm,
Right.
which looks perfectly appropriate. Commissioner Jones found a picture of you. That's your picture, Commissioner Lyles, the one that you advertise with quite a bit, so I put that one in there. Yours, Commissioner Lehman, was the only one that wasn't scaled down to size, having a little trouble with that, but maybe you can help me with that later.
It has to leave room for my ego, I guess. I'd be happy to help. But I think those are all good pictures to start with, but a professional website would have, you know, pictures that really
Okay.
look like they were consistent. So, but that's something we can do later.
Okay.
Anything further on any other matters from commission members? Seeing none. Future meeting dates, which is the last item on your agenda, you'll see we will not reconvene unless we need to do so in a specially called meeting. We will not meet again until the second Tuesday, if you will, in September 13th. Any questions about those dates? And obviously, if members are going to have or incur a problem attending those, please let Mike know as quickly as possible so that that he can govern the need for rescheduling if we're not going to have a quorum. Yes, Chairman Jones, you're recognized. Chairperson Jones.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, I know we had discussed not meeting in July and August, and I know we have one issue that might require us to meet before that, but is there any public issues that we feel that we would need to address between now and our September 13th date? I'm really asking this, I think, of Mr. Morowski. Or do we have any pending issues that we really need to address between now and then?
There's nothing that comes to mind.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Lehman, you recognize.
Sorry, this bubbled up a little late. In August, their first meeting in August, usually around the 15th, I forget the exact day, but you're going to present the bylaws, the amended two portions of the ethics ordinance. So you'll be there to answer questions?
That's what I was told, yes. Yes,
So-
I'll be doing that presentation.
So you don't need a commissioner there?
No.
Okay, maybe if some of the commissioners who are here in August and want to sit in an air-conditioned room could show up and back up our intrepid executive director, that'd be great.
Just let us know the date and time of those, and if we're here and available, I'm certainly happy to attend.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn? Any public comments? Are there any public comments? Have we received any, Jessica? Have you received any public comments?
None.
Mr. Morowski?
No, sir.
Okay. And I see none present, and I don't hear any on the line. So no public comments. I think we're now, the meeting will be adjourned. Thanks, members.
Thank you.